Alrighty guys, hello and welcome back to the show. So today we have a video I have been extremely excited for the past few years. I think 3 years, maybe coming up on 4 years now. Today we're going to be looking at Sanctuary Shattered Sun and the demo that they have released. They've released a playable demo for Patreon supporters, and with plans, I believe, to release that demo to just general Steam users as well in the future. So today I'm going to be looking at the demo. We're going to look at the things that I like, the things that I don't like, and seeing how the progress on Sanctuary Shattered Sun has been going. But before we get into that, I do feel morally obligated to disclose the fact that I am an investor in Hearten Media now. So I do have a fiscal interest in this game succeeding and in Hearten Media succeeding as a company. So some people might look at that as a conflict of interest. Me personally, I look at it as more of an endorsement because I wouldn't invest money in a company that I felt like had a really, really terrible product. So just feel like I need to disclose that because I am going to be saying a lot of good things about them in this video. And so, I don't want there to be any perceived or any, I guess, drama around conflict of interest or anything like that. So with that, let's get into it. Okay, so what is in the demo? So the playable demo has 3 modes, sort of. One mode is really just kind of a benchmark. It uses the and Hearten Media's engine. I forget the exact name, what they're actually calling their engine, but it uses their in-house engine that they have built from the ground up based on Unity. If you want a lot of the technical specs, I would recommend you go watch the interview that I did with one of the leaders of Hearten Media at the time, Tatsu. I'll have that linked in the description down below. But it runs a benchmark on your existing hardware. Make sure that, just to kind of see whether or not you'd be able to run the game and what kind of performance you can get out of it. The second mode is to show off some of the more crazy features that Hearten Media has been working on. So things like map destruction or freezing the ocean or stuff like that. And then the last one is actually a playable game that is a survival mode where you try and survive against different waves of enemies. So even though this demo is very much a demonstration in the purest terms of the engine under the hood, I am honestly extremely encouraged by what I'm seeing. Now, I look at this from a little bit more of a technical perspective, and because I am a FAF content creator, most of my comparisons will be with Supreme Commander Forged Alliance Forever. So in case this video gets picked up by people that watch Beyond All Reason or Sins of a Solar Empire, or Age of Empires, or whatever, if you're seeing me comparing this to Supreme Commander, that's why. It's because that's what I've kind of built my entire channel off of. So firstly, for players that are used to this kind of game, so this would be Forged Alliance Forever, Planetary Annihilation, Beyond All Reason, Total Annihilation, Zero K. There's a bunch of them out there. You are going to feel right at home in Sanctuary. The economy, it works very similarly, if not identical, and the parallels are much closer to Forged Alliance Forever than with the other games that I mentioned. So you're going to have 3 separate and distinct tech levels. One factory can be upgraded to Tech 2, Tech 3. You have kind of a trickle-based economy where you build one initial mass extractor and then you can upgrade them in the future. So very similar to Forged Alliance Forever. And that was, I believe, the overall team's goal. A lot of the same creature comforts that we're used to in Forged Alliance, like dragging lines of PGens or factories, those are going to be all the same as well. And then you can also have one factory making a unit queue, and the other factories, you can right click and assist those factories. Strategic zoom, still a mainstay, and honestly something I've become spoiled with now. And I really have a hard time playing games that are not either Sins of a Solar Empire or Forged Alliance Forever. Like I struggle playing Age of Empires now because I keep trying to zoom out and see the whole map, and I can't zoom out and see the whole map. And honestly, it was at this point that I kind of had to remind myself that this is a pre-alpha release, because so many of the things that I've just become used to and I would hope to see in a full release are just already there. And an excellent example is the factory assist mechanic. I was honestly not expecting that in this release. And I was trying to break some things, and nothing broke. So I think that's a really, really good and positive view. Now, one of the questions that I think a lot of people are going to have is, where is Sanctuary Shattered Sun better than some of the games that have come before it, like Forged Alliance Forever, Beyond All Reason? This game is honestly the epitome of you versus the guy she told you not to worry about. If you want a full technical breakdown of how they're doing different things, go and check out my interview with Tatsu, or a lot of Steel Speaks videos as well. He's been following the development much closer than I have on a regular basis. But I'm going to put a couple of visuals on the screen here and just see if you can catch what I'm talking about as far as just superior technical design. Pathfinding, dude. Like, the units actually move like they are aware of each other's existence. Whereas like Forged Alliance Forever engineers look like a bunch of wind-up toys that are all just running at each other. And I realize that this is a really small thing to like zero in on, but this is just such a good example of the different technical underpinnings that are sitting under the hood. Now, I tried a couple of years ago my hand at making a real-time strategy game, and one of the most difficult portions of it is pathfinding and getting the AI to pathfind correctly around different objects that you actually put in the world, and especially pathfinding around other units and allied units. So pathfinding is just an excellent example of how the technical underpinnings of this game are turning out to be exactly what we're looking for as far as a spiritual successor to Supreme Commander Forged Alliance Forever. Now, as far as map destruction, modification, the visuals are beautiful and everything functions really well. Being able to destroy the map or freeze water to create new lanes and new avenues of attack, or even using it as a defense mechanism if you're losing Navy, is super innovative. We'll see how this plays out as far as balance goes, and that's going to be one of the things that I'll point out that might be more on the negative side. But on the positive side, the visuals look absolutely fantastic and they function really, really well. So next we'll go into another of a little bit more technical area, but it executes across multiple CPU cores. There are two things holding back Forged Alliance Forever, in my opinion, from a technical level. One is the way network connections are handled. If you don't know, Forged Alliance Forever operates off of a peer-to-peer architecture. And the second is how the engine actually executes instructions. So the engine in Supreme Commander is largely a single-threaded engine. I talk about this a lot in different videos that I've posted. But a single thread essentially means that for modern CPUs, Supreme Commander is using only like 1/6 or even 1/12 of the overall horsepower that your computer actually has. So being able to have a real-time strategy game that is fully multi-threaded and optimized means that the Enhearten Media team are going to be able to do a lot more cooler things and have them execute really smoothly, because it's taking advantage of all the horsepower that modern CPUs have to offer. And this kind of makes sense as far as the industry moving this way. Multi-core CPUs were really just starting to be a thing and gain relevance whenever Supreme Commander Forged Alliance came out. And Supreme Commander was actually pretty groundbreaking in the fact that it does runs some of its physics calculations on a separate core, but having a true multi-threaded experience is going to be something amazing. So running the Sanctuary stress test, it shows good utilization across all the cores on my 12700KF, meaning that sim speed for larger games will be much better. One of the reasons why it kind of sucks playing 16-player games is there's always that one dude running like an i3 from 2014 or something like that is going to just bog down the sim speed for everybody. And the entire game is running at like -3, and it takes like 2 hours to play a 45-minute long game. So this means that hopefully that the person who, does decide to load into a game running an FX 8350 with a CPU rating of like 400 won't bring games to a crawl as badly. Maybe it'll still crawl, but hopefully it won't be as bad. And to kind of stress test this, I actually ran a test on some very old hardware that I had laying around just to see how the engine performed. And it was playable. It wasn't great, but you're getting in the arena of 30 FPS, which for a real-time strategy game isn't terrible. And if you're curious what this was run on, this was run on an i5 4670K, 32 gigs of RAM, and an old AMD RX 580. So most of this hardware is from like 2015 or so. So about 10-year-old hardware, and it does look like it handles the game relatively well. Okay, next point is that for a pre-alpha release, the hardware support honestly really surprised me. I have a pretty unusual hardware deployment. I am one of the only people out there that bought an ARC A770. Whenever I got it a couple years ago, I did run into a lot of problems, like most other people did, around driver support for certain games. One of the main reasons why I don't make Beyond All Reason content anymore is because my video recording suite will crash whenever I try and record, ever since I installed the A770. So I honestly wasn't holding my breath that this was going to run well or at all, and that I'd have to swap in an older card to get footage. But everything ran super flawlessly and smoothly, even with kind of a graphics card that it was what, like 0.1% or less than 0.1% of people are actually using, or a graphics card manufacturer that so few people are using. Now, the last point, as far as good things about this game, and honestly, most importantly, is I had fun. I enjoyed the game. The visuals, units, effects, sounds, these are all getting blended into a really outstanding experience. And honestly, with this being a pre-alpha release, I forgot that I was playing a game that was pre-alpha. I kept waiting for the next shoe to drop, like there to be some sort of like buffer overflow issue, or for the game to just start crashing, especially with the graphics card that I'm running. But everything worked perfectly, and I forgot that I was playing a pre-alpha game. And this is super encouraging for what the full release actually looks like. Okay, so now we'll get into maybe some of the things that I dislike, or maybe some of the things that worry me. The first one, not necessarily going to be a dislike, but more just something to temper everything I've said earlier, because I've been hyping this game up for a while. I'm not saying that everybody should go run out and become a tier 3 or tier 4 Patreon supporter. I forget the exact tier that gets the demo. And get this, because it is not a fully baked game. And the only reason you should do that is if you just really love survival and wave defense. But in my footage, you'll probably notice that several of the units just aren't finished in the alpha. There are going to be missing sound effects. There's no multiplayer, no campaign. Edge pan doesn't work. There are a couple of other UI things that I think need to be ironed out. But all this to be said, that the game is not done. And I feel like it's a little obnoxious that I have to say that. But it needs to be said, the game is not finished. I'm not recommending that everybody go become a Patreon tier 3 supporter just to be able to play this game. If you really love survival, or if you really want to support Enhearten Media, then by all means go for it. But if you're just looking to, experience, like if you're looking at this as like a game purchase, I wouldn't look at it as a game purchase yet. So the first actual critique is going to be around map destruction and modification. So this is, I think, one of the highest cool factor elements that Sanctuary is going to be introducing. But I think it needs to be very carefully balanced against. And maybe there are some things that have come out around how they're looking at balancing this that somebody like Steel Speaks, or somebody who is following this development a little bit more closely than myself have already ironed out. But I'm just looking at this from kind of a coming into this demo perspective, and being able to just straight up destroy the map is something that will need to be balanced around quite heavily. Or being able to freeze the oceans, like any of these kind of like big things that you can do as far as map modification, I think we need to be very careful about how we're actually balancing this, so that, it's not just, it ends up being fun. It's not just one team turtling, or both teams turtling and just racing to see who can get these like big end game weapons. And end game units are nothing new to FAF or to people that are used to this formula of game, because you've got, things like the Big Bertha and Total Annihilation. You've got the Mavor and Forge Alliance Forever. Like, these are all things that, and in Planetary Annihilation, you can slam planets into each other and just completely, which is also kind of map destruction. So as far as balance goes, this needs to be pretty heavily looked at. I don't know whether there's going to be a competitive scene around Sanctuary, but if there is, one thing I might recommend is that the competitive scene doesn't have the big map destroying super weapons, which is kind of how like Planetary Annihilation handles it. The second one, and this is one that I'm sure everyone, including myself, has been thinking about. We've been hearing about Sanctuary for a long time. In the video that I did with Tatsu, this was, I think, back in 2022, at the end of 2022, so a little over 2 years ago. Tatsu said that they were targeting kind of an end of 2023 release date or early 2024, with a GoFundMe that went live at the beginning of 2023. And my dates might be a little bit off. Somebody can go fact check me on that, or maybe I'll just fact check myself. But obviously here we are in 2025 and we have a playable demo, where, initially full release was like late 2024. This is something that I've talked with, kind of the owners of Enhearten Media about, and, something that did worry me a little bit. But I think it just comes down to, they want to be able to create kind of a full game. And if they're not out of money and they don't have to go to market yet, then they don't. And I understand that, being a pretty business minded person as well. Like, whenever you're developing this project, you're always weighing things like, you're always weighing whether or not you think the project is truly done or whether you're out of money. And sometimes, like, if you've got extra money and are able to, put the finishing touches and final tweaks and throw something out that you are really, really proud of, I can completely understand them delaying the release. But I also know that, we've been kind of waiting for this for a long time, and it seems like the release just keeps getting pushed out. So it is something that I think should be mentioned. But the fact that we do have a playable demo now is, I think, a step in the right direction on this game coming out in a timely fashion. Honestly, those are the only two critiques that I really have about the game. Everything else was great. And I'm super excited to get it in my hands and play it. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Hopefully this video does reach some other people that are outside of just my normal Fortune Alliance Forever community. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it bombs like my interview with Tatsu, but we'll see. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about Sanctuary right now and kind of where it stands. If you've played the demo, what did you think about it? And I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.